Welcome back. It is the Vegas Take. Sharp and Shapiro on a Tuesday. So glad you could join us. A reminder, coming up in hour number 2, the Minister Stretch Sanders will be joining us. I know he has plenty of opinions on this whole Colin Kaepernick, as I like to call it, a sham over the weekend, a PR stunt, wearing a Kunta Kinte shirt. So we'll talk to him about that coming up in hour number 2. I promise you it'll be explosive because I know we're going to disagree on this one. But as you know, these impeachment inquiry hearings continue right now as we speak on the stage. Vindman is up there testifying, and I believe it to be very credible testimony. Let's find out what they think from the Daily Caller. Right now, joining us on the line, she does a great job as a political reporter covering these proceedings, and we appreciate her taking some time to join us. Amber Athey. Amber, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Sure. So can you set up for us what is going on today, the people who are testifying and who will be testifying later on this week?
Sure. So who we're hearing from today is Jennifer Williams. She's an aide to Vice President Mike Pence, detailed over from the National Security Council. And then you have Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman, who's also a member of the National Security Council. And both of these individuals are actually the first to testify in the public impeachment inquiry that were firsthand witnesses to President Donald Trump's July 25th call with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. So these are the first 2 firsthand witnesses that we've actually heard from, at least out in the open. And basically they're testifying to both the call as well as the context that surrounded it, including the conversations and concerns that they had with other individuals after that call was made regarding whether or not the president was participating in a quid pro quo arrangement with Ukraine.
Gotcha. Okay, so now I have not been able to watch any of the proceedings this morning. We've been on the air. One of my friends, who does happen to be a Democrat, full disclosure, said, quote, "The Republicans have reached a new low, attacking a member of our military for wearing his uniform and asked to be addressed by his rank." He says every American should be disgusted and outraged by this cowardly act. Would you agree or disagree with that?
Well, my understanding was that the person he's referring to is Nunes, who called him Mr. Vindman instead of Lieutenant Colonel Vindman. It just looked like an oversight to me. I don't think he meant it as a disrespect or anything of that matter. And I haven't heard anyone attack him for wearing his uniform. In fact, Republican Representative Chris Stewart just lauded him for wearing the uniform, noting that he thinks it's an important reminder of his service.
Oh, that's important. And by the way, I'm glad you said that because that's very, very important. And I think everybody should treat this man like that. What do you make of this, though? What do you make of some members on the right that have attacked this man? And this happened, a few weeks ago, where even some that are paid employees of CNN were attacking this guy and saying that maybe he is not, pro-U.S. He's more pro-Ukraine, even though he risked his life for this country and he's got shrapnel in his body. What do you make of some Republicans, obviously not all of them, but a handful of them that have gone after this man, for somebody that risked his life for this country?
Yeah, here's the thing. I don't think it's appropriate to question his dedication to the United States. I think what's more important is if you're going to attack this person or criticize him, it should be based on the merits of his testimony.
Sure.
And thus far, at least in today's hearing, that's been the bulk of what's happening. The Republicans have pointed out that perhaps Vindman's concerns about President Trump's phone call with Zelensky were more about foreign policy disagreements, more so than the president doing something impeachable or immoral or unethical.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's fair, and I think you're right about that. You should be able to question his testimony. That's what this is all about. We want to get the facts, and we want to understand what is going on. So Sondland, correct me if I'm wrong, you said Sondland is testifying tomorrow?
He's testifying Thursday, I believe.
Thursday. Okay, so I would imagine, and you correct me if I'm wrong, Amber, but that is going to be the biggest witness thus far. I mean, you would think, right? I mean, he changes his written testimony. We really don't know why he decided to do that, but he switches it up. This is someone, like you said, with firsthand knowledge. For the Democrats, anyway, they're really counting on this guy, are they not?
Of course, and I think what they'll probably focus on are the fact that he was in those text messages with other ambassadors discussing the president's motivations, because, of course, we already have the call transcript. So even though we are hearing from people who were on the phone call listening in on July 25th, we already know the contents of the call because of the transcript that was released, which both Vindman and Morrison have said they believe to be completely accurate. What these other individuals can testify to, whether it's Bill Taylor last week or Sondland on Thursday, is that they were supposed to be actually enacting the president's policies and trying to determine what his intent was when asking for those investigations? Was he trying to use a foreign power to investigate a political opponent and meddle in the election? Or was he trying to, as Republicans have claimed, merely root out corruption in a country that has been known to be very corrupt?
If we're just joining us, we are speaking with Amber Athey. She does a great job for the Daily Caller in covering this. Okay, so Amber, you've been covering all this up since day one. I want to just get your personal opinion on this. I mean, obviously, there's a lot more testimony. There's a lot more evidence that we may or may not see. But with that being said, where do you see this thing going? Do you think that there is a strong possibility, based on what we know, what you know at this time, that there is a chance that the president could possibly be impeached? Do you think it'll ever pass? Do you think that there will be a few Republicans' minds that could possibly be changed after hearing all this testimony? Where do you see this thing going?
I see most people standing exactly where they did when this transcript was released. You see Republicans taking the same line that the president was merely trying to root out corruption. He didn't do anything to try to meddle in an election. You have Democrats now changing from the quid pro quo to saying that the president engaged in bribery by allegedly dangling military aid in an Oval Office visit in exchange for this investigation of Joe Biden or Burisma or Hunter Biden. But no one's minds have really seemed to be changed since then. So what we're looking at right now is obviously a Democratic majority in the House. If every single Democrat decides to vote for impeachment, then the president will be impeached. But then we go over to the Senate, which will actually decide if the president gets removed from office. You have a Republican majority there, and you have Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, who is really good at locking up his Republican members and making sure that they're all voting on the same line. So it would be very unlikely that you would see enough Republicans break from the majority to vote to remove this president.
So at this point, you would say that the impeachment inquiry has not gone well for Democrats?
Well, certainly not when you look at polling. Over the past week, as these impeachment inquiries have gone public, support among independents, which of course the Democrats will need in the 2020 election, has dropped by 7 percentage points, which is hugely significant. You see Republicans opposing impeachment, obviously, by close to 90%, really overwhelmingly opposing that. So when you get into the fact that we're heading into election, that the president can be removed from office merely by people voting in an electoral process to get rid of him rather than going through an impeachment process, it would be much more fruitful, in my opinion, for the Democrats to focus on a winning message and a winning candidate in 2020 rather than doing something that is clearly alienating a lot of people in the center.
Well, let me ask you this, because I'm one of those people that are in the center, and obviously I want to know the truth, as I think many other Americans do. At least I would hope so. What we've learned is that he did bring up the Bidens in this phone call, whether they held aid or not, and it appears to me that he probably did hold the aid, at least partly because of this, because he wanted an investigation into the Bidens. What I find troubling is that there are people out there that think that he brought up the Bidens in this conversation only because he cares so much about corruption. He cares so much about corruption, right? When he hasn't brought up corruption with anyone on the right. So my question is, why is it that there are people out there that think that this had absolutely nothing to do with the fact that Joe Biden is not only a Democrat and the former vice president, but most likely his main political rival in 2020? And if that is the case, and I think any reasonable person would agree with me, that has to be partly the reason why he brought up the Bidens, because of the political rival possibly in 2020 in the elections. Then wouldn't that be abuse of power? To me, it's pretty simple.
Yeah, well, I obviously can't speak to what people out there in Middle America are thinking about the impeachment inquiry. What I can tell you is I was watching a series of focus groups last week with independent voters in key swing states like North Carolina, Michigan, Iowa. And what they were saying was that, one, they were concerned about the process being taken in the impeachment inquiry. And two, they aren't super dialed up on the details. They haven't mentioned in those focus groups, at least, they didn't mention Ukraine. They didn't mention Joe Biden or a quid pro quo. They seem to be more concerned about the fact that the impeachment inquiry is distracting from the other issues that they care about, the issues that they want to hear about from politicians in the 2020 election. So that's going to be a key thing for them moving forward in trying to get – and Democrats have recognized this, by the way, in their own focus groups, because initially they were using the phrase quid pro quo. They then were talking to voters who seemingly thought that the entire impeachment inquiry was simply too complicated to follow along. Democrats then simplified their message down to extortion and then bribery. So they clearly understand that most voters either aren't following along, don't have the time to follow along, the capacity to follow along, and are trying to make the case to them in a much simpler manner. And again, in the focus groups I was looking at, most people don't really seem to care about this. They want to talk about the other issues.
So I'm going to switch subjects real quick. Donald Trump was rushed to the not rushed, but he made an untimely, unplanned visit to the Walter Reed Hospital. And people, the left is stating that there's possibly maybe he's looking for a scapegoat to resign. The right is saying there's nothing going on. What do you know about this, and what are your thoughts on it?
Well, what I can tell you is that this event was not on the schedule that is given to White House correspondent members beforehand. That doesn't mean that it wasn't planned on behalf of the White House. There are sometimes things that are on the president's schedule that do not get released to reporters for national security reasons or other reasons. From what I know, there was nothing untoward about this visit. The statements from Walter Reed and, of course, the White House seem to confirm that. But you do have people on the left and in the media who obviously don't trust the White House and the statements that they release. So you'll be hard-pressed to convince them that there isn't some type of conspiracy going on here. The president actually just spoke about this in a cabinet meeting about 20 minutes ago, and he called the media sick for speculating about his health and said that he was immediately asked after the visit if he had had a heart attack, and basically said that it was crazy and that he was completing the first part of his physical, which he will continue with in January.
My understanding is that if he was conducting the first part of his physical, they could have done that inside the White House. There are people that have been covering the politics for years, even doctors, one of whom worked for Barack Obama, that said if that was the case, he didn't have to leave the White House to do it. What do you say to those comments?
Well, that's certainly possible. I just think it's irresponsible for any reporter to speculate, especially about the president's health, without any real evidence that there's anything wrong.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. I mean, it's certainly our job to speculate, that's for sure. I do find it particularly suspicious, but we'll continue to monitor this. We'll see what happens. Okay, on a lighter note, Amber, for whatever reason, Fartgate is trending on social media. I know you tweeted about it a little bit, so I want to play you a little bit of audio. You probably know what I'm going to play. In an interview yesterday with MSNBC host Chris Matthews, California Representative Democrat Eric Swalwell appeared to pass wind. Let's play this.
Taxpayer dollars to ask the Ukrainians to help them cheat an election. And the complaint that I've heard from Republicans.
Okay, Amber. Report on this. What exactly is Fartgate, and what are the latest you can give us on this, Amber?
Yeah, there's a lot of theories floating around. Some people are saying that because Eric Swalwell was in the Capitol Rotunda, the fart would have echoed much more if it came from him. Others have pointed out that this has actually happened before on Chris Matthews' show, and maybe he is a serial farter that is blaming it on his guests and trying to scapegoat them into accepting the fart. Eric Swalwell has claimed that it was not him, that he did not hear it when it happened, which I am very skeptical of because you can see a slight smirk on his face after it happens. So that's all we know so far, but I do hope that we're going to get to the bottom of this because MSNBC is trying to blame this on a mug, and I think that is fake news.
That is absolutely fake news, and I'll tell you what, to me, this is more important than the impeachment inquiry. We need to get down to the bottom of this, Amber, that's for sure.
I think most Americans probably agree with you.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm very concerned about this.
Amber,
this is a huge issue.
Amber, you guys do a great job over there at the Daily Caller, and I really appreciate you taking some time to join us and kind of sort all this stuff out. Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thanks again for having me.
All right. Appreciate that.
Thanks a lot, Amber.
There you go. Amber Athey from the Daily Caller. They really do a wonderful job in kind of laying everything out when it comes to the impeachment inquiry, everything that is political news today, not just the inquiry, everything. They do a fantastic job. So we do appreciate Amber's time in talking about all the issues of the day. See, to me, I just try to – somebody might say, well, Brian, you're oversimplifying this impeachment inquiry. You're oversimplifying what's going on here. No, I don't think I am. But I think there are a lot of people out there that really don't understand the true gist of what's going on here. It appears as though, based on the evidence and based on more testimony, that Donald Trump did, in fact, withhold aid with the Ukrainians because he wanted an investigation into the Bidens. Now, it's also very simple. You cannot convince any reasonable human being that Donald Trump brought up Joe Biden just for corruption because he cares so much about corruption. That is an absurd take. It is an absurd opinion. There's no question that he brought up the Bidens because Joe Biden is a Democrat and he's one of Donald Trump's political rivals. Any reasonable person that is not biased would come up with that conclusion. And after you come up with that conclusion, you have to say to yourself, wow, that has to be abuse of power. And if it is abuse of power, it absolutely can be an offense that could take you up to impeachment. You don't have to necessarily commit a crime to be impeached. Now, with Bill Clinton, it was very cut and dry. But I'm going to tell you something, guys. I would rather have the president of the United States cheat on his wife in the Oval Office and lie about it. Now, I'd rather that never happen at all, of course. But I would rather have somebody like Bill Clinton lie about getting oral sex in the Oval Office than to withhold aid for political gain. To me, withholding aid for political gain is one of the worst things you can do as the president because you're putting yourself before the United States of America and to other countries and other people in harm's way. So you have to ask yourself that question. Yes, I know there are plenty of people out there that are Donald Trump supporters that think the man can do no wrong, right? When he said, I can shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and you're still going to vote for me. I'm not talking to those people because you're never going to change their minds. They're stubborn. And I understand that there's people that are so far on the left, it doesn't matter what good or what Donald Trump does, everything he does is wrong. And make no mistake about it, I'm not one of those people. But to me, this is very simple. Now, I'm not a Donald Trump fan. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not a supporter of his. I'm not a fan of his for the way he treats people and the way he has treated people his whole life, the things he said, the people he attacks, so on and so forth. But this is not that complex as many reporters, and I understand why Amber said that. A lot of people aren't following this maybe as closely as they should. In very simple terms, the evidence is overwhelming that he withheld the funds, withheld the aid, because he wanted an investigation into the Bidens. Him just saying what he said in that so-called transcript is enough.
There's definitely a part of it is why because he wanted the investigation into the Bidens. Because the investigation into the Bidens, as you stated yesterday, did not even take place. It was very, very minor.
If he cares about investigations and he cares so much about corruption, then why didn't he go after people in his own administration that are now in jail?
And she said this, but America, the majority of America cares about getting things done in America. And this is doing nothing. I think this is helping the Democratic Party. That's all it's helping. It's not helping anybody. What's being addressed? I mean, look at is our government working on any type of issue right now? Are we passing any laws? No, we're focusing on this for months and months at a time.
How about the past 2 years?
It's all about prioritizing what is helping them and what is helping their pocketbook, and this is helping nobody right now because everything's just stagnant.
Well, I think you can blame the president for that because I don't think this is helping the president.
The president's been attacked. He's been attacked from the media for 2 years simply for winning the election because they thought he wasn't going to win.
That's a ridiculous talking point. He hasn't been attacked because he won the election.
Brian,
it's not true.
He has been attacked every single day. You know, I tried to look up positive things about Donald Trump's presidency a couple days ago. I had to go to page 27 of Google to do so.
Let me ask you a question.
Do you know why that is?
What do you think
because
Fox News did?
The mainstream media is going out of their way to make him look like he is a totally incompetent, invalidated president.
Well, he is. He is.
Based on what?
He is incompetent.
How is he incompetent?
How about this impeachment inquiry alone? He's the one who brought up the Bidens. Nobody forced him to do that. You've said it yourself. He didn't have to do it.
He looked into. I totally. I don't think he needed to look into the Bidens
at all.
And
it was a horrible decision.
I thought he was going to win. I think he's going to crush him regardless. After he gets out of this scot-free, which I believe he is going to do.
And you're making my point for me. He should have never brought it up. He should have been known better. He should have never brought up the Bidens.
He was looking into corruption.
Oh, please.
For a politician who has been in office for almost 40 years,
absolutely
Brian.
Nonsense. How about all the
people? Joe Biden said, I'm not going to give $1 billion to the Ukraine unless within 6 hours this particular prosecutor is fired. Because
he didn't have to say that.
Because he might be corrupt.
He didn't have to say that.
But there was no thorough investigation into that particular situation.
Actually, there was an investigation.
No, it wasn't. It was not very thorough.
There was an investigation, and it ended.
It ended almost immediately.
With no It's right. It ended with no findings.
And House Democrats were actively involved in it.
So you're defending the president of the United States bringing up Joe Biden in that conversation and withholding aid. You're defending him doing that. You don't have a problem with that.
I said looking into corruption. Do we know for an absolute fact that he withheld aid?
Let me ask you a question.
No, do we know for an absolute fact?
Based on evidence, based on witnesses that believe that he cared more about the Bidens than actually the Ukraine. Absolutely.
Because in their opinions, are they biased?
Well, we're going to have firsthand knowledge coming up on Thursday.
In their opinion, he cared more about the Bidens than Ukraine. That means that he withheld aid?
Yeah, according to several witnesses.
He wanted to have an investigation started that he believes ended too quickly into his potential.
And you don't think that has anything to do with benefiting him? Give me a break. Are we being serious here?
No, I don't think that Joe Biden is even a threat to Donald Trump at any point.
Okay, well, that's you.
I don't think that he needed to do that.
That's you. Well,
okay,
obviously,
and you're you, and our listeners are themselves.
Obviously, he didn't have to do that. Obviously, it was an idiotic decision, and it's why he's in the mess he is in right now, and it's why we do have the distraction we have. I'm not going to blame the Democrats for opening up an impeachment inquiry. You know who I'm going to blame? The person who brought up Joe Biden in that conversation.
Right, fine.
That's who I'm going to blame.
But you can't say that anything is getting done and this is good for the country because it's not.
Okay,
it's ineffective. And the average person listening to our show or across the United States is thinking the exact same thing because they don't care. They care about what affects their lives, not what appeases the left-wing media.
All right, we got to take a break. I completely disagree with you, but we are going to continue this conversation. These impeachment inquiry hearings are not going away. Coming up next, guys, this is going to be a lot of fun. It is our weekly segment with the minister himself, Stretch Sanders. We're going to get into this Colin Kaepernick thing, and I have a feeling we might disagree on that. We'll take a break, be back right after this, and we'll take your phone calls. You're listening to The Vegas Take right here on the all-new 101.5 FM, 720 AM, KDAWN.